Welcome everybody to another Take a Peek episode, where this week we are taking a peek at Banished, a new series of mine that I recently started. So what is Banished? Well, it's a city building simulation and a survival strategy game where you take control of 8 banished people, 8 banished adults plus their children, and it is up to you to build a brand new society. All you start with is whatever you decide, basically. It gets a little bit more complicated than that, but effectively you are to create a new city and a brand new society. See if you can make it work. So you go in here, the options right away. There's actually quite a few options you can play with, and it's pretty good about just doing whatever it is that you need to have it do. It's very fairly extensive in the way of actual options here, so it's actually very, very good. Absolutely love that about this game. Plenty of achievements. Plenty of achievements that you need to get done. If you're an achievement person, this game definitely has plenty of achievements for you. Also has mod capability, where you can go on the Steam Workshop and modify the game. And probably one of the very best tutorials I've ever seen in a very long time. The tutorials in this game are amazing. There's 4 of them, and they explain the concepts of this game brilliantly. If you check out this game, I highly recommend starting with the tutorials, as they do a solid job of explaining the game. However, I'm going to explain the game here without the tutorials. So, when you go in to create a new game in Banished, you have your town name. You can auto-generate, make it a random name, or you can type in your own town name. So, my town name. You can also do random map seeds that are based off of what you put down here, or you can throw in, 7777. There you go. Random map seed is now that. Change the terrain type. It can be valleys or mountains, so it kind of depends on how you want to play. The mountains makes it really hard to expand. It's more of a long, narrow type of a city that you'll have to end up building. There's these small areas where you can build. In valleys, it's just wide open areas, big open areas, and you can just build a really big, flat city. And it's no curves, or very few curves, kind of move with the river and with the mountains, but for the most part, with valleys, it's just big, wide open space to build a city that you want to build. Typically, valleys is considered a much easier way to play the game. Mountains is a little bit more advanced. If you have the map size, the terrain size, you have small, medium, or large. Honestly, large maps are not super massive. They're definitely big enough. They are by far big enough. But in a small map, you can still do a fair bit, but a large map does not take that much more to load. It doesn't take that much more processing. So you really may as well go for the large maps, unless you're just getting started. If you're just trying to learn how the game works, a small map is good for that, but after your very first game, a large map really is what you want. Medium is not all that special. The large map is definitely what you want if you're in for the long haul. The climate, you can decide between mild, fair, and harsh. This is effectively your difficulty setting right here. How hard is the game going to be on your people? Now, of course, like I mentioned before, the 8 adults you start with, plus their children, they are your greatest resource. The people are your greatest resource. They will build your things, they'll gather the resources, and they'll keep themselves alive the best they can. The climate, mild, fair, or harsh, kind of determines how the environment actually impacts them. So if it's a mild climate, then you're not going to have a really harsh winter where it just is horribly cold and freezes everything. On harsh, that is almost every winter. It happens, and it's brutal. It really is a brutal, harsh winter. The summers are really hot, and they beat down on your people. It's very extreme environments in harsh. Fair is about moderate, just fairly cold, but not super cold. But fairly hot, not super hot. Not a lot of thunderstorms or anything that'd be detrimental to your people. And then mild is just like fairly consistent temperature throughout the year. It fluctuates a little bit through the winter and the summer. Obviously, going to be hotter in the summer months and colder in the winter months. But not so much that it's going to cause massive issues and make your people have a hard time to survive. The mild is definitely easy, fair is medium, and harsh is hard mode for sure. You can make it harder, like I said, easier with valleys, harder with mountains. Just generally speaking, I'd say it's easier going on a large map than a small map. Disasters on or off. Disasters on, obviously it's a little bit harder. Main disasters in the game are fire and tornado. And those two are really the ones you're going to see the most often in the game. If you do leave disasters on, they will wreak havoc on your cities. You have to be very observant, very astute. Because when a disaster happens, now it won't happen all the time. Disasters can also include disease. That can also come from disasters. But when it does happen, you need to be vigilant. You need to be aware of what the disaster is, what it's doing, and then act accordingly to keep as many of your people alive as possible. Because it's not easy to deal with disasters, especially when you're playing on a very condensed location. When like all of your city is in one area, a tornado or a fire can devastate everything and just totally destroy your town. Maybe not completely ruin your game, but if you don't have adequate stores of food and building material, you could have a game over with one really bad disaster. So do play disasters cautiously. If you have them on, I say it adds more fun, more variety to the game. But if you just want a calm city builder, turn disasters off, and the game becomes, you play it completely differently. You can play it absolutely completely differently. Even do a little bit of role playing. I mean, you could still do role playing with disasters on, but definitely easier with disasters off because you can just kind of make the city as you wish without having to worry about it getting burned to the ground. And then your various starting conditions. So there's tiny text down here that might be hard for you guys to read. So it basically explains the difficulty, and I put that in air quotes, the difficulty of the game. What you start with to kind of determine how hard the game is going to be. Now, I say that you start with 8 adults and their children. That's not a 100% accurate statement. On hard mode, you start with 4 families, which is 8 adults. 4 males and 4 females. And then you start with their children. So, you also get a small amount of basic resources they can live on. It's enough resources for those 4 families to live on for 1 year. That's it. Hard mode is you get 1 year worth of resources, and it's up to you to build a successful city in 1 year that will sustain that population of 4 families plus additional families and additional growth that would come from that. If you go to easier difficulties, medium, you have 5 families, so you have more people to work with right off the bat, which means you can do more faster. You have a good bit of clothing, food, firewood, tools, and construction materials. You also start with a couple buildings. You start with a storage barn, and you start with lots of seeds. So you can plant farmland, or you can plant trees, or both. You could grow corn, maize, or you could grow apples or plums, for example. And then if you go for the absolute easiest mode, you just want the easiest basic start, you have 6 families. That's 12 adults and all of their children. pretty good-sized early population. You start with an excess amount of clothing, food, firewood, building materials, and tools. You also have plenty of pre-built buildings. You have homes, storage areas, which include stockpiles and storage barns. And then you have plenty of seeds for fields and orchards, and you have livestock as well. Starting conditions easy definitely gets you off with all sorts of stuff that can make a world of a difference later on in the game. Getting seeds and livestock really early on instead of having to trade for it. For example, playing on hard mode, you have no seeds, you have no livestock. You have to trade for that stuff. But if you have seeds and livestock early on, that means you're going to have farms. And farms produce the greatest amount of food. No question. Farms produce a massive amount of food. So having the seeds readily available and the livestock readily available is an absolutely huge boon. Huge advantage. Which means if you do easy mode with valley, large, mild, and off, and then generate that map, this map follows these conditions. All of these maps that I'm now generating follow these conditions. And truthfully, this is about as easy as it gets. You can also do mountains, large, harsh, on, and hard. And this is as hard as the game gets. Right here, this is where you decide all your difficulty settings, and it's made very clear for what you're doing. I mean, people kind of know what valleys are, you know what mountains are, kind of makes sense. Various types of climates, again, it's fairly intuitive what kind of terrain, what kind of environment you're going to be building in, and what you're going to be dealing with when you actually get into the game. So instead of starting up a fresh map, I'm going to go ahead and show you what your map might look like after you start the game, getting a little bit further in, past the first year, past day 1. So on day 1, you start with a cart, and I chose hard mode, so I'm speaking strictly for hard mode. You start with a cart and some resources and some people and call it good. This is year 4. So if we zoom out here, we can see this is a large map, pretty big here. I'm not even going to the map borders for the most part. It's a fairly large map. There's a lot of stuff you can do in this size of a map. And you can see I've created a small little town here. And the storage cart I have left here so you guys can see what that is. So you start with this storage cart and 8 people. Well, 8 adults. You can see that number has increased. Adults, students, and children. Students come later when you build schools. So with that initial starting conditions, with your storage cart and your people, you need to give yourself the resources to advance to the next region. Well, not to the next region, to just like advance to the next level of city. There are no specific levels per se, but right now this is like a small settlement. As you progress through the game, the achievements, go if I can find that for you, the achievements, there you go. So settlement is 300, a village is 600, and a town is 900. For example, now if you really need to work towards becoming a true settlement, not just a small gathering of people living out in the middle of nowhere. So at the very beginning of the game, you're going to want to make sure you collect stone. And you just go down here to this resource collection, removal and destruction tool. And you want to collect all the stone. So you just collect some stone, mark that. And you want to make sure you also have trees, because you need logs. So these trees up here, for example, you want those to be fully harvested. You don't have to worry too much about iron in the beginning. The iron's not really a big deal until a little bit later in the game. Like year 2 is when iron becomes more important. In year 1, all you need is stone and logs. See up here, this is all the information for the village. These are your logs, your stone, and your iron. Then you have down here some firewood, which will keep your people warm. So these three are your building materials. Logs, stone, and iron, that's your building materials. You have firewood, which you get from logs with a woodcutter. That is necessary so that you can keep your people warm during the winters. It's late summer, and we don't have a lot of firewood, so going into the winter, this won't be pleasant. You also have coal, which is a more advanced version of keeping your people warm. You get those by building mines inside of mountains. So if we go to resource production, we go to mine. You can see that if I were to build a mine over here, if it's even possible, here we go. So there's a mine possibility right there. So I could build a mine, and it just needs to be built. So when building a thing, remove all the 18 trees, then supply 48 logs, supply 68 stone, and then it'll take 100 hammers, 100 whackings to fully build the mine. Once it's fully built, you can choose between iron or coal, which will determine what kind of mine you want. I don't actually want the mine to be there, so let's go and remove that. But you can choose between iron and coal, and that just determines what the mine will produce. Then you also have tools down here. So with tools, see I have none. Didn't do a very good job here. You get tools from the blacksmith. And the blacksmith, you can build iron tools or you can build steel tools, depending on what you have. Initially, all you're going to want is iron tools. It's log and iron. But when you can get some extra coal, the third ingredient, steel tools are definitely preferred. Now, why tools? Why would you want to have tools? Well, all of your citizens will do everything in the game regardless. They will find a way to get the job done. If they're building a building, they'll find a way to build the building. If they're fishing, they'll find a way to fish. If they're chopping wood to make firewood, they'll figure it out. But you need tools because tools will make them get the job done faster. What's faster, chopping firewood with a rock or with iron, an iron axe? The axe is far faster at chopping firewood. What about digging ground in a mine? You want a pickaxe, you want a pickaxe and a shovel, not your bare hands. Or fishing, have you ever tried to grab fish in the water? It's pretty much impossible. But if you have a fishing line or a spear, it makes it much, much easier. So if you supply your people with tools, they will work faster. And you supply them with steel instead of iron, the tools will last longer and they'll work even faster. You definitely want to pick up tools very early on. That's year 2 stuff after you've acquired food. Food and shelter. So very beginning of the game, you need housing. Wooden houses are the easiest things to come across. Stone houses later, for sure. And then a boarding house is pretty good as well, but it's not as good of a place. People are not going to be as happy in a boarding house. It's just kind of a homeless shelter. It'll get the job done, but it's not going to be the best. Having actual housing is going to be very important. So you can see I've placed down some houses in here, and they have occupants. People live there. Over time, people have moved into these houses, and as I build more houses, new families, new couples will go into the houses and produce babies. The babies, of course, are very important for the survival of your entire village. If you don't have any children, and all of your people are really too old to reproduce, you're just going to die out of old age and just become a ghost town. Otherwise, you really need to build houses on a fairly regular basis. You don't want to build them too fast. Growing your population too quickly will lead to overpopulation. You're going to be way over your population, and you're not going to have enough food. You're not going to have enough firewood. You're not going to have enough tools. And you might not even have enough jobs to supply this new growing population that you decided to build too many houses. Now, we're in year 4 right now, and I have 5 houses, but I'm building 3 more. These 3 more houses are definitely going to do a good enough job come year 4 to help really grow the population. I have 14 adults and 5 children. Really, you want to have about 3 to 1. 3 adults for every 1 child tends to be a good ratio. 2 to 1 might be a little much, but if you do it right, you should end up being fine. Sometimes there's multiple children per household, and they'll end up inheriting the household from their parents. You don't have to worry about inbreeding too much. That's not really a concern. It's they're not going to be genetic deformities or abnormalities or anything. It's just going to be they'll partner up with whoever they partner up with, and then it just works itself out. It's not too specific on what would happen if in a realistic setting like this. What would happen to the people living there over time? So you got your houses built. You have them. You collected your resources. You built your houses. You now have your people. They've taken into their houses some food and some firewood, and they're set. They have stuff to go. But you realize you're kind of running out of food here, and you're a little bit low on firewood. So you build a woodcutter. The woodcutter will take some of those excess logs. Remember earlier we designated some trees to remove. By the way, I have the game paused. So they chop down those trees, bring it over to the stockpile. From the stockpile, go to the woodcutter. The woodcutter will chop up the logs and firewood, and then carry that over back to the stockpile, where then people can take it and put it in their homes to keep them warm when it's fairly cold. Now, obviously, they're not going to use firewood during the summer months. It's 78 degrees Fahrenheit right now. They're not going to be using any firewood. They're perfectly fine. But come winter, they're definitely going to be using firewood. So you're going to want to make sure that you have firewood set up. But you're also going to need, like I mentioned many times before, you desperately need food. Food is the biggest, most important resource in this game other than people. The easiest way to get food early on in the game is the Gatherer's Hut. The Gatherer's Hut will bring in a massive amount of food. So you can see previous season it brought in about 1,000 in food, which is pretty good. And this season, we're about halfway through the season, and we're on course to match about what last season was. Except this year, we're having more mushrooms and probably more onions. One of the other super effective ways to get food is the hunting cabins. You see the hunting cabin brings in venison and it brings in leather. So meat and hide skins to build clothes out of. It's not a lot with just one hunter. You see I only have 1 of 4 hunters. Whereas over here I have 2 of 4 gatherers. Now imagine this multiplied by 4. And this multiplied by 2, and that's how much food it could ultimately bring in. But as it stands right now, it's not bringing in a huge amount. And if they were placed in a slightly better location, where they did not overlap with housing, they would bring in even more. But between these two, off the bat, you're going to be getting a lot of food that can go into your storage barns that you'll need to build later. For the meantime, you'll have your storage cart, and all the food will just go in there. People will take it and put it in their houses as they see fit. The more food variety the people have, the better. So one more thing you're going to want to pick up is probably the fastest available food source, fishing docks. Fishing docks will bring in a little bit of fish. Now mind you, this is 1 of 4 people working here, bringing in about 180 fish. This season, 180 fish. That's a pretty good haul for one person at a fishing dock. And it's about roughly about as much as you get from hunting cabins. But ultimately, hunting cabins do end up bringing in more food, and they bring in leather, which does make them superior. That being said, a well-placed fishing dock can bring in a massive amount of food. So what do I mean by well-placed? We go into food production here, and you see we have fields, orchards, pastures for the livestock and seeds that I mentioned earlier. And of course, we have the gatherer's hut, the hunting cabin. We also have the fishing dock right here in the center. So if you look at the resources, I hover over these. It says, you know, times 30 for the logs, times 16 for the stone. That's just how much resources it takes. The gatherer's hut is the cheapest and probably the most effective overall. The hunting cabin is the most expensive of the three in terms of like overall. I personally think it's fairly expensive. But arguably the fishing dock is the most expensive of the three in terms of just number of resources. So, you see the little, you see the yellow circle that kind of goes around the fishing dock here? That's the area that it works. That's the area where you can actually use the fishing dock and where it will get all the fish from. So if you have fishing docks that overlap like this, they're going to be fishing the same area, which means they're not going to be very efficient. So what you want is to not overlap. So like the next fishing dock would be somewhere like about right here, or maybe a little bit over. Now that would be a good fishing dock area. There's minimal overlap, and it's right on a river. Out here is a great fishing dock area, right off of a lake that the river connects into. You can see there's a lot more water that's being covered by these fishing docks. The more water you have, the better. You absolutely need the water. It will get you going in the right direction. Now, of course, if I could place a fishing dock out here, that would be phenomenal. But I don't think that's going to be a possibility. Yeah, it's just a little bit too small of an island. Out here would be just best case scenario fishing dock. If you could get a fishing dock out here, that would be... Place this location. I don't know. Oh, I guess it's... Okay, I see. But if you get a fishing dock out in the middle of a lake like this, that would be absolutely massive. And that would be producing an absolutely huge amount of food. However, there's one more situation that appears far more common that will still give you a huge amount of food, and that's fishing docks in these areas. You can see I have a fishing dock slated for construction right here. Little spot right here. A little bit darker than the rest. That's because it's a shadow of a foundation. So I built it right here. Now right there, it controls a great amount of water. That's absolutely huge. So that fishing dock will produce a lot of food. Moving on, another location to be fairly awesome would be one up in here. That's fairly similar to the other location. It just controls a lot of water. These are the kind of locations that you really want to get a hold of when you're trying to build a fishing dock. Is something right out in here. Absolutely great, and they would produce a large amount of food for your town. Fishing docks are fairly easy. They don't require much, and they do a very good job. The gatherer's hut's probably the best early game. Definitely get that first. The hunting cabin is phenomenal. You're going to want that so you can get leather to build clothes to help keep your people warm. And the fishing dock's always solid for that. When you can start building crop fields, orchards, and pastures, that's when you're really going to get some food. Which brings me to the final row down here. I don't think I forgot. The amount of stored food overall. The amount of stored medicine, which you get from herbalists. So again, if I go into resource production, we have the herbalist over here, which will keep your citizens healthier longer and help deal with disease. And then the amount of stored clothing and the amount of alcohol. Alcohol helps keep your people happy. Clothing, which you can build from a tailor using the leather you get from a hunting cabin. The clothing will help keep them warm during the winter. And the higher the durability of the clothing, the better. So the more ingredients you have, leather, wool, etc., will end up making the clothing better and just last longer and keep them warmer. Notice we also have your health of your citizens and the happiness of your citizens. This will go up and down over time. They'll be healthier with more medicine as your herbalist completes and attends to your citizens. If you have a doctor, they'll be even healthier. Happiness is dictated by whether or not there's an abundance of resources for them to work with and whether or not they have alcohol. Now, your people can be perfectly happy without alcohol, but after a certain point, they are going to demand it. The happier citizens, the better. Over here, we see the professions. So this is where you choose who works where. This is every single profession in the game. Early on, you're going to have laborers and builders for sure. You're also going to want to make sure you have gatherers, fishermen, and hunters. The woodcutter is huge. That's one of your firsts. And the forester should come up fairly quickly after that. It should come up around the same time that you bring your blacksmith up and running. The forester will help supply the logs that go towards everything. They plant trees, they chop down trees, and they clear out areas. So in this forestry, for example, this forester's lodge, you can see there's trees in this general area. Lots of baby trees, some older trees over here. The stone that's in here will actually get removed by the forester over time. So you can see last season, they removed 19 stone. This season, 14 stone. Over time, the forester will clear the area out so that all that's there is trees and small plants that grow with it. Of course, having a forest like that, just kind of being built, little oasis, you're going to have animals, little livestock come in. Well, not really livestock. Deer, for the most part, will come in. You can see them down here. Deer, moose, elk, all sorts of different stuff. They'll come in, and that's where your hunting cabin comes in. Hunting cabin will hunt down these animals and bring in the food and the leather to be used in your civilization. Inside of a forest also grows stuff like this over here. Your onions, your mushrooms, and the sort. All in here as well. So, you want to make sure you put your gatherer's hut in the same area as your forester's lodge, because the gatherer's hut will go around and pick up these little food items and bring it back in. And then the last little bit is your herbalist. And the herbalist will find stuff like... I saw one. Where'd it go? There's one up here. Here we go. They'll pick up stuff over here, like this sort of stuff, and take the herbs in, and of course, again, heal your people and make sure that they are fully healthy. Herbalist is kind of important, but not super important. But overall, if you build a forester, always build a gatherer's hut, a hunting lodge, and an herbalist to go with it. It creates a full ecosystem that really is utilizing the land to the best of its capabilities. And try not to do what I did here, where I just kind of ate into a chunk of the foresting area with my storage and my housing, roads that I built. This right here really just kind of takes away from the ecosystem that's been built over here. You can add in some fisherman huts, and that just kind of helps, again, utilize that area. But the more traffic an area gets, the less you're going to get of these little animals. You're still going to get plenty of herbs and little plants and trees, but the animals are going to run away. The more people go through an area, the less likely animals are going to go through there. So do be careful when placing down this sort of stuff. There's no sense in placing down a hunter's lodge in the middle of a city, even if you have a forester there. It's just not going to attract any animals. That's basically the first year or two worth of stuff. And this is what your city might look like after about 4 years. You have your food and your production up and running. It's fairly stable. You have some housing and you're planning some expansion. And you're working on creating a more permanent storage facility. It's a pretty basic first 5 years. The city might look something like this. Let's fast forward the game several years. Several years. We're talking year 40 what might your town look like then? So this little picture here, this is after a fire. This is what your town might look like come year 40. You can see the population is dramatically increased, the amount of supplies and resources increased, healthiness and happiness. You also see down here we have farmland, we have orchards. I'm going to go ahead and unpause it, let people wander around and do stuff. ×5 is perfectly fine. You can see weather effects are in the game as well. Now, some people really complain about these, saying it makes the game hard to see. I personally think it adds a good bit to the game, so I kind of just decided to leave it in there. They come and go. You can see we're early spring of year 41. And this is what your town might look like after 40 years. Now, some 100 people and other things. Lots of other miscellaneous things that are strewn about. So like I mentioned earlier, you start with the wooden houses. Eventually, you can upgrade them to stone houses. So if I click on this, and I click on this button right here. Actually, let's do it. Yeah, this one's fine. And I click stone house. I kick them out and remove all the food from it. And then that'll be upgraded to a stone house over time. So we have a trade depot built at this point, which means other cities, other people will come along this river, and they will come trade with us. They'll stop at the trading post, and they'll offer things. So in this case, they're offering wheat seeds, and I have put other stuff in here. I put herbs, hide coats, firewood, and tools is what they're all valued at. You need to equal or put in a greater value before they'll actually accept it. Notice this merchant, the seed merchant, does not accept herbs. Some of them do, but not all of them. Which means if I wanted to buy these wheat seeds, I'd have to chuck forth 500 firewood. You see, that's not quite equal. I need an additional 500 units to make it happen. So if I do, 20 hide coats, and let's see, I have, 200 left. Kind of a toughie, isn't it? 50. If I did this trade right here, 550 firewood, 20 hide coats, I could get a hold of the wheat seeds. Now, what I actually have... Do I have wheat seeds? That's a really good question. Now, what I could do is go down to one of these farms down here. And you see it's a cabbage field and a corn field. So if I click on this... You can see I have a ton of different seed types. What will appear in here will only be the different seed types that you have. So squash, corn, beans, pumpkin, wheat, pepper, and cabbage. So I do indeed have wheat seeds. There's really no sense in trading with this trader. We don't really need their seeds. We'll just go ahead and dismiss them. Away the trader will go. You can say we automatically want to purchase some things, and it'll do some calculations for us. We can order some things. So with the trader... I could have ordered a new type of seeds. It said bring that next time or bring that every time. We also have the inventory where we can decide what it is that we want to trade and how much of it do we want to trade. So you see the trading post is 48% full. We have to be fairly careful with how much we put in there because we don't want to deprive our city of too many resources, but at the same time, we want to make sure we have enough that we can effectively trade with other people. In this case, we're stocking up on hide coats. We say we want 50, we have 28. So as hide coats are made, they're going to be brought to the trading post so that we have them ready to be traded away. We're maxed out on firewood and herbs and iron tools. Everything's all taken care of in that front. This is the boarding house I was talking about earlier. It has the homeless people, so the people we just kicked out of this house now living in this boarding house. But they need to not worry, because this stone house is almost finished being built. This is another house that was being upgraded earlier and is now completely ready to be built. Elsewhere, we have this stone house that's being built, and as well as other construction projects, such as a cemetery and some other stone houses. We have some stuff on hold, the quarry, another fishing dock, and some stuff that's completely maxed out. So the blacksmith is building steel tools, 200 of them. We're at 200 too, so we're perfectly fine with our tools right now. Elsewhere, later in the game, you're going to run out of iron and stone to directly mine off the map. So you need to make a mine, like I mentioned earlier, to get iron or coal. You can decide what you want. And you need to make quarries that'll give you the extra stone. Again, just determine how much stone you want. If you want it to work or not, you can block it off. But for the most part, you're going to need to pick up these quarries and these mines early on, which is why I have another quarry over here designated for construction. Because quarries can eventually run out of stone. So these 45% remaining, when that's done, it's just a giant hole in the ground that's completely unusable. So we're going to need to have another quarry to take care of everything. Whoop, rotated the map there. Up here we also have two mines side by side that when our other mines, our current mines, so for example this iron mine and this coal mine, when they run out, we're going to need another mine to bring in everything. Now do notice, take note here, that as you expand, you may not have a giant residential sector. In fact, you can see I have residential here, a little bit of here, a little bit up here, some over here, and I have some residential right over here, and then a nice big chunk down here. There really isn't a giant residential sector. There's even a little bit of housing over here. It's more of put houses where people need to be. And this is very important when you look at later on in the city, you can build eventually a town hall and a church. The chapel will help keep people happy. The town hall will give you a plethora of details. This is exactly kind of information you want. So you general overview, which is basically this info and this info. But it gives you a little bit of bonus here. How many people are clothed? How many people are educated? And then you can go into production. So you can see displays for how many years. So for the past 25 years, this is what we've done in 25 years versus what we have right now. Or what we did compared to last year. How are we faring compared to last year's stuff? Good to check end of year. Your inventory, you can sort it by name or by quantity. Whoops. You can also sort it by the amount in storage. So your storage, trading posts, and in homes. So how much of my stuff is in homes? So we have that in homes. We have this much extra in storage. And then we have this much stuff over in the trading post right now. There are graphs, which is great for visual people, especially like myself. I absolutely love graphs. This is a population graph over the past 5 years. So let's do 10 years here. So looking at this graph, it tells you a great deal of information of the history of Bless, the town Bless. What happened? Well, we're looking back here several years ago. Let's say 5 years ago or so. A little bit more than 5 years. 6 years ago, there was a population spike. So I built a whole bunch of houses all at once. There was this nice big population spike. Huge amount of people. And then population continued to trend upwards after the population spike. For the most part, for several years, it was looking good. Excuse me. For several years, it was looking good. My throat's getting a little hoarse. I do apologize for the squeak. However, we had a slight spike again, and then a massive decline in population. Why? What happened? Who died? Well, we go to 5 years. We can see the majority of the people that died here were adults and some children. And in some of the children area also went down the students. You can see the student line kind of went away. Just around the same level as the children line. And this massive decrease here was because of starvation. Famine kicked in because we didn't have enough food. We had a nice big population spike. Again, we had a big population spike right here. Huge percentage of population, lots of new houses, lots of new babies. And then we couldn't feed them all. Lasted for several years, but we weren't able to feed all the people over time, and eventually they all died off from starvation. Which is why we have so many cemeteries, is we were over, we were about at 160 total population, and it was cut in half. Almost cut in half. It was just horrible. Lots and lots of people were dying, and that just didn't work out very well. So that's not a good thing. You can check the citizens. Past 10 years, how many of each type of citizen have you had? And you can see that, like, this is a percentage-wise. So what applies to your citizens percentage-wise? So are they healthy? Are they happy? Are they educated? And are they clothed? It's in the high 90s, almost 100% for most of it, except for education. Education will increase over time through the 25-year outlook. You see, education has definitely increased over time, minus specific incidents when we didn't have enough schools to handle the children. But for the most part, education has definitely increased over time. You can also see everything else. How's your food? So we look at food again. That 10-year outlook. You can see food dramatically decreased right here. Everyone is going for the food, but we just didn't have enough food. We weren't completely out, but it wasn't pretty. There just wasn't enough food in key locations to go around. Trader. You have trader. Leather. Tell you what, we'll buy 100 leather. It's worth 1,000. We'll give you 500 firewood. For that, or not, oh geez, no, 250 firewood, my bad. 250 firewood for 100 leather. So we'll do trade. We can order him to bring in more leather. We can bring him coats, coal, ale. This guy is a resource merchant, so we can bring in various resources. We can say do it every visit or just once, whatever we might want to get. Even ask him to bring in tools or firewood. But we pretty much make everything we need to make, so it's not a big deal. Grabbing a little extra leather, though, not a bad thing. We can just go ahead and dismiss you. Goodbye. And head and continue. So, plenty of information in here for those of you that are interested in that information. Nomads. So when nomads are requesting citizenship at the time, they will show up. You'll get a little notification down here that says there are nomads at the town hall. You can either deny them or you can allow them. Having a boarding house greatly helps with nomads, because the nomads are a big population spike. So the boarding house can take a hold of that, and they can definitely prepare themselves for it. It holds on to firewood and food as it needs to for the amount of people that are living there. Building stuff, right? Yeah, we're still building stuff. There's stuff that needs to be built. It's getting done. And of course, your trade items. So what am I missing? Well, 3 things overall. I'm missing 3 total things. Don't know what it is. But I can do pretty much everything else, which allows me humongous food variety, which will help keep my people healthy. We're out of iron. Yeah, there is iron over here. Designate this iron to be up. That iron. Stone over here too. Get rid of that. Give me that stuff. We need a little bit of extra. So we're going into winter now. So cemeteries will also help keep your people happy, which is extremely important. They want a place to go visit their dead relatives and mourn them. Do not fret, though, because eventually, after X amount of years, the graves will go away and spots will open up in your cemetery. So when everyone died, when that huge decline in population happened, this cemetery was full. It had all 144 graves filled up. You see, now it's down to 108. We've lived long well enough, and it's just generally gone fairly well that the grave sites have, for the most part, gone away. They're not as important anymore. As people die, they'll come fill in more grave sites. But what we have right now with the opening over here, A little bit of opening over here, and then opening on the big one, and a brand new cemetery as well. With all of that, we should end up being perfectly well off. Don't build that quarry yet. 2 more fishermen. That's good. And again, we still have this gatherer, forester, hunter, and herbalist set up right outside of our city. A little bit of stuff kind of getting in there, but you're okay for the most part. Markets are a phenomenal place for all of your people to come and get resources. It's just a ginormous location where people can get resources from. You assign people to work in the markets, and all the resource trading goes a lot faster, and you can get more resources out to your people faster with more people working in the market, more traders over. We have another one up here again: hunting cabin, herbalist, forester, gatherer. We have a stockpile for the and a storage barn for the forester and the sites. And this storage barn helps supply food to these people way out here, because they may not necessarily be able to have access to the food like most other people would. So ultimately, see, now that's being built right away. The builders are going nuts. Laborers are doing what they need to do, and the fishing dock's going to be done. 2 people are going to work there. Maybe 1 person. Make sure you have an excess of laborers. You can see people are dying of old age. They can die of miscellaneous things like trees falling on them, for example. But make sure you have an excess of laborers. The laborers will help fill in gaps as people die. Very important to have the laborers. Go ahead and kick some more people out and build some more places. So you can see this one's being rebuilt. Make sure the builders have plenty to do. And overall, this is again a more advanced town. Has a lot of open, not a lot of open area, but a lot of stuff has been done. We're working on a lot of stuff right now. That being said, there's only a little over 100 people. Well, close to 150 people now with all the babies. About 150 people living in this little town here. You get on into the really late game, a really long time, 200 years of playing the game, and you're going to get a lot of people, assuming that you manage it correctly, make sure they have a lot of food, and just slowly grow over time. So what are you trading in? Food. So we got a food merchant. So we don't actually need food, so bye-bye. They'll just bring in as much food as you need overall. And then, okay, nomads are around the town hall. So, overview, no, nomads. So, 14 nomads, we'll go ahead and allow them in. So, 14 nomads will leave from the town hall, and they'll all scurry off to the boarding house eventually. Which means we're going to make sure we have to have new housing and plenty of housing for these new nomads. So, house here, house here. That should be good enough for now. 2 more houses for probably, what, 3 families? Plus the houses that are being built. We could fit in 1 more right here. Sure. We can even put in a little road. Make sure everything works the way it should. Stone houses are less likely to catch fire, and they're also more likely to, well, they're not more likely. They do keep your people warmer during the winter. They use less firewood, which is why we can trade away so much firewood. They don't actually use that much. So the new housing we have built, we should be able to handle all these new nomads. One more thing I should note about the game. You can slow the game down, speed it up, what you want, up to ×10. And then you have tools and reports. This is probably one last aspect of the game that I think is really kick-ass. So the log, let's get rid of that. Want it back. Info about the city up there. Your production, your jobs. You have a map. Do you want a map of the area? Because that's what that can look like. You can also have production limits. So if I want to have 2,000 tools instead of 200 tools. Now we'll have 2,000 tools. Only need 200. We could store up to 2,000. 2,000 logs, 500 stone. I could change these numbers and values, and it would change how much is being stored in the various locations they need to be stored in. Nice, quick shortcuts for that. Down here, we also have increased priority. So if I want to make sure this quarry gets built really, really fast, I can select the area and increase that priority. That the quarry gets built now. Number one thing it gets built. You'll see pathing. This is very important information. So this house, people work over here. These people work over here. These people work over here. They work right there, pretty easy. Farmers, yep, lots of farmers over here. Fishers, some extra quarry people, lots of farmers. Even some people that work the mines and the fishing hut. This information is very important. So there's nobody living there. No, laborers are probably living here. Laborers don't have any specific pathing. And farmers, foresters, hunters, and the sort. Some people that work over in here. And then the boarding house. They all work in this area as well. So this pathing tool is very important. It tells you how far they have to walk to get to their job, which will also tell you how far they have to walk to get to food. So using this is very important, and it can teach you a lot about how to build a city, which is partly why I have housing here, housing here, housing here, housing here, housing here, housing here, housing up there, housing down here, just kind of scattered about. People will live near their work locations. You can save camera locations if you want specific camera locations. And then you can show the information at the town hall as well. So you just go straight to the town hall. Boom. There you go. And then help and reference materials. Overall, this game, I mean, that's pretty much all the game has to offer. There is more. There is definitely more that I didn't show you guys. But for the most part, that's the big amount that the game really has to offer. There's a lot. There's definitely a lot here. And personally, I think it's a grand game. It does a brilliant job of creating a relaxed environment where you can build whatever you want to build, but also a very tense environment when it comes to disasters. And it's well designed, well polished, very few bugs, and the mods do a very good job of expanding the game if you find the base game to not be enough. Personally, I find the base game to be more than enough, and the way... Oh, that's bad. This is a disaster. Anyways, the way the game... Like, finish sentence. The way the game goes about presenting this information to you, and it goes about doing what is necessary and teaching you how to act conservatively while still growing everything. It does a very good job. There's no politics. There's nothing special going on behind the scenes. Anyways, pretty much you have access to pretty much everything that you need access to. You saw earlier that I clicked on a citizen. You can do that. You can get specific information about that citizen, anything they're holding, if they're carrying stuff. You holding anything? You're holding fish. Get information about him. You can pin it, unpin it, whatever. Follow him. All the information you need is readily available. The little thing that appeared down here, yellow fever. It's a disaster. It's aided. Like, you remove yellow fever by having 1, high health and lots of herbs, medicine, and 2, you need a physician, which we have. So we can actually just speed the game back up. Whenever a disaster occurs, it'll put it down to the slowest speed, so you have time to react. See, the guy with yellow fever is in here. This is where our clinic is. You have 1 patient in the hospital, 2 patients in the hospital. Oh, there's a person with yellow fever. They need to go to the hospital too. So they'll eventually find their way to the hospital eventually. You know, whenever. If you're not careful, they'll start dying in mass if you don't have a physician and medicine. But we'll be able to keep yellow fever down. It says up here, we have 1 person with yellow fever overall. And the herbalist, I think that's what it says, a herdsman, died during childbirth, so that's unfortunate. We lost another person, but that's okay. We have plenty of grave sites. Plenty of grave sites. Overall, I give this game about an 8 out of 10. It's a really nice game. I really like a lot of the design aspects. The music is wonderful. I feel like it could have more. There could definitely be more stuff to do in the game, and I would like to see bigger maps. I would like to see the size of the maps be bigger overall. I personally like large maps, absolutely massive maps, huge maps. And I don't feel like the large maps are really big enough. They don't give me a sense of awe. For a lot of this game instills a variety of emotions, especially awe and excitement and happy and sad, and just it really draws the emotions out of you as you play the game, and you become attached to people like Paletti and Lossum over time. You know, you find the person that's really old, look for the oldest person in your town, and you pay attention to them. It's like, you know, how's that person doing? And who's the next oldest person if that person dies? And you see people die before your oldest person, and it's just like, wow. You know, that person's living for a really long time. Good job to them. You can grow really attached to your city and to the people in the city, and that's something this game does very well. It definitely does it very well, and I would like to see more of that, personally. That being said, it's 20 bucks on Steam, which I think is totally worth it. $20 is totally reasonable, despite me wanting more out of the game. That's actually a good thing. You know, I want the maps to be larger. That's the only thing I'm missing is a sense of true awe from every aspect of the game. Most aspects bring it, but not every aspect. That's why it doesn't get a higher than a 7 out of 10. 8 out of 10, maybe. But if it had larger maps, then I would probably push it up to 8.5. If it had more content, more options for food, for building types of stuff, infrastructure, then I would definitely put it up a little bit higher. I think we have plenty of cattle and sheep, actually. We have lots of sheep. Chickens. Should have cattle somewhere. No cattle. We have absolutely no cattle. 6,400. I don't know if we can have that much. 1,000. Yep, we can have that much. Okay, 1,500. No, not 4,500. 1,500. Additional 400 units. So at 4, that's 5. So 50. Actually, I can just go to 600. There you go. Thank you for the cattle. So now there's a whole bunch of cattle here. And the herdsman will... Well, okay, the cattle are going to the pasture. You can actually have... one of the big things that's kind of silly about this game, you can have 1 cow or 1 sheep, and they'll just kind of reproduce through mitosis. They'll just kind of divide into 2. You'll just suddenly have a baby one, and there's no reason for it. And then you'll have a whole bunch of babies, and it's just like, how are you cows reproducing? There was 1 of you. There was 1 cow, and now there's many. Doesn't make any sense. The chickens, all the herd animals do that, which I think is really silly. But other than that, for the most part, the game is fairly bug-free. And I think that actually kind of makes the game a little bit easier. If you can only afford 1 cow, you can have that 1 cow and be totally good. Actually, now having those cows, that's actually really helpful. But anyways, guys, this game I highly recommend, despite giving it a slightly lower score. I do highly recommend this game. It is a great deal of fun. It does a really good job of pretty much everything. And like I said, the only thing I'm really missing here is just an overarching sense of awe for what is happening in the game. That's 25. Why do we have not 25? We're good there, good there, good there. Yeah, we're fine for pretty much everything. But if you like city builders or you like survival type games like Don't Starve, for example, you like games like that, this would be a good try. You like SimCity, definitely pick this game up. This is a city builder through and through. There's no taxes. There's no like money, physical currency, which kind of makes me sad. I wish you could mine gold and silver and trade that, make coins in a mint and stuff. You know, that kind of stuff is additional content. And you know what? It might exist on the workshop. I don't know. I didn't look too in depth. But if you add more content like that, it would definitely be great. But all you do is just barter economy. It's all barter economy, and it works really well. And this is communism. It's the way the people live is communism, but it's very selfish communism. It is, I will grab everything I need and my family needs, and if you don't have enough, well, screw you. I have enough for my family. And oddly enough, there's not any infighting, which is okay, I guess. No police system. But there's a lot of stuff out there on the workshop that will help bring this game to the next level. So if you don't feel like this game has enough, or you want more out of it, just check out the workshop, and there's plenty of information there for you. And plenty of different stuff there for you as well. So, like I said, guys, this is a definite pickup. It is $20 on Steam. Link down below in the description, as always. And like I said, if you enjoy city builders, or if you're a little cautious, if you're not entirely convinced, I'd seriously recommend picking it up, at least on sale, and giving it a try. The game is surprisingly addicting, and it teaches you everything through the tutorial very well as throwing you in the game. You make mistakes, and it'll punish you. It'll very brutally punish you. It'll punish you like Dwarf Fortress punishes you when you make mistakes. That being said, it still ends up being a fun experience. And that's something that's really special about this game. It is very fun to play, regardless of whatever might happen. So guys, as always, I will see you next time with another Take a Peek episode. Oh, this has been Banished. And, like I said, pick it up, guys. DFTBA, thanks for watching.